Hey everybody. So let's start talking about the walls of the heart. So when we're looking at the heart, there are multiple components of the heart that we need to talk about. The first ones are the part you're probably thinking about, which is the muscle. So the muscle is more or less where my purple line is going and in. Right? So this is all the muscle of the heart. When we're looking at the different muscle or parts of the muscle of the heart, we have three main names that we're going to talk about. The endocardium. Again, endo is inside. This is going to be the layer right here. This is going to be the inside of the heart. This is going to be the inside of the cavity of the heart. So blood is going to be hanging out inside here. And it's going to get pushed through the different parts of the heart, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The next one we want to talk about is the myocardium. Myo, if you remember from last section, means muscle. So muscle, cardio, heart. This is the heart muscle. This is the main muscle of the heart that you'd be thinking about when you think about heart muscle. That is this whole section right here. So this is the myocardium. This is the main muscle. This is going to contract to squeeze the heart and pump the blood. Right. So when you're thinking of a heartbeat, this is the part of the muscle that is going to be doing the beating. Lastly, the epicardium. Epi means top. The epicardium, and it's going to be right here. So the epicardium is the very top part of the heart, or the area that is most towards the outside of the heart. We also call this the visceral pericardium, which we'll talk about in about 1 second. So epicardium, epi is top or outermost, and cardium is heart. So those are the three major muscle layers of the heart. Now we can discuss the pericardial cavity, which is over here in blue, but I'll circle it in green as well. So the pericardial cavity. The pericardial cavity is a space between the parietal pericardium and the visceral pericardium. So in other words, you see this gap where I'm gonna draw a green line through the gap here. See this gap between the muscle and this white connective tissue? Well, this is very important because in this gap we're gonna have fluid. This fluid is going to be extremely important because it's going to have it's going to make sure that when the heart beats that the muscle and this connective tissue on the outside do not rub up against each other. All right? So if they rub up against each other, just imagine taking your hands, put your hands together and start rubbing your hands back and forth as if you're trying to get warm, right, in the winter. And I say that because, now that it's kind of gave it away, what's going to happen to your hands if you rub them up against each other over and over again? They're going to warm up because of that friction between your two hands. That's not good for your heart. Your heart beats all day. So if your heart's beating all day and it rubs up against the connective tissue on the outside of it, it's going to start to heat up and it's going to start to damage your heart. And you don't want that to happen, especially since its whole job is to beat. So we have this fluid in between the muscle and that connective tissue that is going to prevent friction from occurring. It's going to allow it to effortlessly slide back and forth. And it's really important. So, what's that made of? Well, we have this pericardial tissue on the inside and on the outside. The innermost layer of this tissue is called the visceral pericardium. Visceral refers to the organ itself. So this is the pericardium that is going to be visceral, connected to the organ. So whenever you see visceral, it's connected to an organ. On the opposite side, I'll do this in purple. Over here, this part, right, the other side of the gap is going to be known as the, where's it on here? Parietal pericardium. Parietal refers to the outside part. So we have the visceral pericardium on the inside, and we have the parietal pericardium on the outside. In the middle is going to be the pericardial cavity, right? So you have connective tissue on the inside, you have connective tissue on the outside, which creates that gap in the center, which I will do here in orange. Once again, here's that gap. It goes right between the two, right? Very important. On the most outer layer, so on the other side of the visceral, of the parietal pericardium, which I will now do in yellow, this part, the outermost layer, right? You see this? It's the thick white line here. I'm just going to start following it with the yellow as I talk. This is the fibrous pericardium. This is the thick, dense connective tissue that is going to protect the heart, right? It's kind of like it creates its own little sac that the heart hangs out in. So this way your heart stays in one place. It's connected here. So when your heart beats, it doesn't just beat all over the place and fall into your lungs or something, right? So this is going to be important. It's going to keep your heart in place, but also it's going to have all these blood vessels that are going to attach to it that allow your heart to get blood. Yeah, so this is the pericardium. The next couple slides kind of show the same thing and discuss them. So again, here is a slide that is going to discuss what we just talked about in a little more detail. Here's another image of the pericardium. Just like I said, that pericardium is kind of like a sac the heart hangs out in. And this way your heart just stays in its cavity. This cavity is in between, as you can see here, the lungs. Here's number 1, lung number 2. So it's in between the lungs. If you take that connective tissue off, you can see clearly on the right image the heart and the blood vessels associated with it. Here's just another image of a real life pericardium and how it's all connected in there and it stays in place. Here's another image. Again, you can see how this pericardium is going to cover the outside of it. In this case, as you can see, I will highlight it in yellow, that the pericardium is cut away. The fibrous pericardium is cut away. And you can see it here on the outside. And you can see that what's lining it here is the visceral pericardium. Right, so this really light, you can see the white lines on it, this really light structure. I'll draw in white as well so you can see it. So these white lines, how they go this way. This here is representing the visceral pericardium. This is directly attached to the heart. And that's how you can see right here. If you cut it away, you can see directly onto the heart itself. Right, so this is that layer of pericardium that's directly attached to the heart. And then again, you can see the cutaways of the pericardium. Again, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, just let me know. We will be doing a lab this year where you can get hands-on with one of these hearts and see exactly what we're talking about. If you have any questions about the heart, the pericardium, the myocardium, just let me know.